Could Thrawn and Ezra play a large role in the Star Wars Rebels sequel? Could this search for Ezra be far more than just Ahsoka and Sabine searching for Ezra? Well, I'm starting to believe it could. And recently, Redditor the Throw Away Ewok posted that he had insider knowledge about how Ezra and Thrawn will have a larger role in the Star Wars Rebels sequel, rumored to be coming in late 2020. That said, I'm personally treating this rumor as impressive speculation until we get more confirmation. But let's get right into it. The rumor states that we will follow Ezra and Thrawn, who will become unlikely allies over time. We are introduced to the Chiss Ascendancy, who are in the middle of a war with the Grisk. Now, in the past, I've theorized about how Thrawn and Ezra find themselves shipwrecked and would need to work together in order to survive. In this desperate time, they would come to trust each other. So Thrawn and Ezra working together doesn't seem completely unlikely to me. I also really like the idea that this series could include a galaxy-spanning conflict similar to, say, the Clone Wars series. The only problem I see is that to some, it wouldn't seem like Star Wars. It would seem strange with these new alien species, and even ships that would be strange alien designs. So this is why I believe that Thrawn's 7th Fleet will have been taken to the unknown regions by the Purrgil, not just Thrawn's ship itself. So therefore, Thrawn and Ezra will be participating in the war with an Imperial fleet, and that will help ground this portion of the show in a familiar Star Wars aesthetic. Another reason I love the idea of this galaxy-spanning conflict between the Grisk and the Chiss is that there is a lot of potential for growth in Ezra's character. Will Ezra struggle with using the dark side again? He will, after all, be surrounded by war, and he won't have Kanan and Hera to help guide him. Or will he learn to listen to the will of the Force during this conflict, forge his own path, and not just become weaponized by Thrawn? This will certainly make for some interesting storytelling. But getting back to that Reddit post by the Throw Away Ewok, he also suggests that Thrawn has a niece who is introduced as a main character. She is a Skywalker, which means that she is a Force-sensitive Chiss child who the Chiss use as navigators through the dangerous hyperspace routes of the unknown regions. She also grows close to Ezra. Again, it would make for some fantastic storytelling because it's easy to see that Ezra would share his teachings about the Force with Thrawn's niece, and in doing so, he himself would learn more about the Force. Plus, the fact that Ezra and her grow close could mean that she is the one to prevent Ezra from falling to the dark side, that she might actually help him listen to the cosmic force, preventing him from becoming too wrapped up in this Chiss and Grisk war. Of course, we have no idea how old she is, but she could become a love interest for Ezra as well. I know a lot of fans of the channel want to see Ezra and Sabine become a couple, but that might not happen according to this rumor. And please do remember that I'm just considering all this most impressive speculation, and talking about speculation, I've added to this video my Thrawn and Ezra shipwreck theory and more, so let's move on to that. So what exactly will happen to Thrawn and Ezra after Star Wars Rebels Season 4? We know Dave Filoni has confirmed that they lived through the jump to hyperspace, and Timothy Zahn wants to write the story of their survival. But what exactly could that story be? Well, I have 7 ideas for you today, the first of which is the traditional gladiator scenario. Thrawn and Ezra are captured by aliens and forced to fight as gladiators. Now, some of you might think Ezra is far too powerful to be captured, but just think of Thor and Thor Ragnarok. If he can be captured and made a gladiator, I'm sure Ezra can too. Of course, in Star Wars Rebels, we did see that Thrawn is quite the fighter, and he's just an overall strategic genius, so we'd get to see Thrawn and Ezra as gladiators, and then their great escape. But let's move on to my next idea, and it's sort of this classic Star Wars Voyager-like scenario, where Thrawn and Ezra and the crew of the Chimera repair the ship and are journeying back to known space. Again, from Thrawn alliances, we know that Ezra would be able to use his force powers to navigate system to system, but they wouldn't be able to take a hyperspace jump directly back to Lothal. Plus, there would always be the problem of fuel and other resources. And then, of course, they would probably come across people who would need help, and Ezra would no doubt force Thrawn and the Chimera crew into helping those people. But moving on here, there's also the scenario of Thrawn and Ezra shipwrecked on a dangerous planet. I love this person versus nature scenario where there's maybe creatures attacking the Chimera, or Thrawn and Ezra holding out against those creatures. Maybe it's a jungle planet and the jungle slowly starts to take over the Chimera as they're trying to repair it. Or as I detailed in a similar theory, Thrawn and Ezra have to go into the jungle up to an elevated position so that they can send out a distress signal. And of course, they would be hunted by the local jungle creatures as they do that. It certainly doesn't sound like something for kids, but I think it'd make for an interesting story regardless. So let's move on to number 4. I also like the idea of seeing Thrawn, Ezra, and some Imperials as sort of this Magnificent Seven scenario. That Chimera has crash landed and the locals of a smallish town will award Thrawn and Ezra a spaceship if they can defend the town versus the planet's marauding bandits. I like this idea because it gives Thrawn a chance to show his strategic genius, of course, and Ezra working under Thrawn's strategic genius, being able to use his Jedi powers. And overall, I just love this Magnificent Seven scenario, where you have this group of soldiers trying to hold out against the bandits. And I also have another similar story, sort of like this, where Thrawn and Ezra would need to defeat a monster. Again, Thrawn and Ezra crash land on an inhabited planet and are taken to a nearby town. They have no credits and no resources to sell, but they decide to embark on a quest to hunt down a local monster for a serious reward. This could get really interesting, especially if they have absolutely no resources such as weapons. Again, it might be a little too scary for an animation show, but it would be really cool to see Thrawn and Ezra use their different ways of thinking to help overcome this monster. But let's move on to number 6. I like the idea of a war movie type of scenario where Thrawn and Ezra are thrust into the middle of the Chiss Civil War, which was hinted at in Thrawn Alliances. Early on in this story, we could see Thrawn convince Ezra that he must help him defeat the Grisk and win this Chiss Civil War. And as Ezra progresses through this story, we could see him become wary of the war and the fight as it drags on. I'm not really sure where that story would go, so let's move on to number 7, in which Thrawn and Ezra discover a Jedi-like order of monks, which allow Ezra to develop his Force powers, and Thrawn to rediscover some of his Force powers, which I know might be a bit of a surprise for you guys, but it was hinted at in Thrawn Alliances that Thrawn previously, as a young child, may have actually had Force powers. So it'd be interesting to see both of these characters sort of challenged by these monks and developing some Force powers. But that said, what do you think about today's speculation? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, answer today's question of the day. What sort of story do you think Thrawn and Ezra should have after Star Wars Rebels Season 4? And as always, may the Force be with you.